Great. Well, Craig, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us this morning about your new film, The Last Glaciers. We are really excited to be opening this at the Museum of Discovery and Science's AutoNation IMAX Theatre in April. So we are thrilled to bits to have you and to learn more about what went into creating this incredible film. So welcome. Would love to really hear a little bit about you to start with, and tell us about the process. How did this get started?
It was a film that actually chose us, I think. The topic did. It, as the name suggests, it's a climate change film, but it started out as an extreme sports documentary. And it was focused on a particularly new genre of extreme sports called para-alpinism. And we first started filming in the Alps, in the French Alps, actually, in 2016, in the middle of winter. But when we turned our cameras to the mountains, it was brown, not white. What we encountered was glaciers that were retreating and an environment that wasn't really as it should be. At least that's what the locals were telling us. And in fact, the message we were getting was that this had been something that had been happening for decades and was getting worse each year. So the producer and I started talking to meteorologists in the area who actually told us that what the guides and the people who lived in the area were telling us, the anecdotal stories were true, and the science and the data backed it up. And it coincided with a talk I had to go back and do in Hong Kong at a conference on single-use plastics following my most recent film, A Plastic Ocean. And I met a scientist there called Jerome Chapeles from the Glacier Clim, which is the oldest glaciological institute on the planet in Grenoble. And he was heading up a project called the Ice Memory Project. And scientists were pulling ice cores from glaciers all around the world to access the frozen bubbles that were contained in these ice cores. And from those, they're able to tell exactly what the atmosphere was like on the planet going back 10,000 years, 100,000 years, up to a million years ago, the product of 8 ice ages. And the story was very much one of a natural oscillation of greenhouse gases waxing and waning as the Earth rotated or wobbled rather on its elliptical orbit around the Earth, until we humans came along and started burning fossil fuels. And you see this graph, just suddenly this hockey stick goes off from this natural oscillation. And I thought that was something very visual that I hadn't seen before, that really explained climate change and how humans were responsible. So we had a discussion about the direction of the documentary, and we thought this is a very important story that needed to be told. But we thought we already had a great vehicle to tell it, something that would still be interesting and exciting and maybe get people along to a climate change documentary that they wouldn't normally go to see. And so we decided to pivot the core focus of the narrative arc from being purely about para-alpinism to being about climate change through the lens of disappearing glaciers, but using the vehicle and the excitement of extreme sports to tell the story.
Thank you. And, you know, I cannot wait when we open this April 15th to see it on our giant screen. You know, I've had a sneak peek, but as you know, it's very different seeing it on a small screen versus the thrill of seeing it on the last screen. It's interesting that you said how thrilling it was because, you know, there's a few shots in there when you're trekking and you're right on the edge. And I don't know that it was thrill that I'm seeing on your face all the time. There was definitely some trepidation and perhaps even fear there. Would you talk through what it was like, you know, filming under those, you know, kind of terrifying conditions often?
Yeah, well, the fear you see on my face is real. I can tell you that. I'm an oceans guy. I'm not really, or wasn't until this documentary, a mountain guy. And in fact, we we took 12 months out to train myself, Dave Turner, who's in the film, and Malcolm Wood, the producer, specifically oversaw my training so that I could get into the mountains and work with scientists and them to see what was happening to glaciers all over the world. But that was a real personal challenge for me because I have a deep fear of heights. So getting into these high mountain, very hostile environments often meant scaling mountains, vertical rock faces, ice climbing, going out onto summit areas where you're looking over on either side of you, and there's a 3, 4, 5 to 10,000 foot drop, and any mistake could have been quite disastrous. So the areas we're in were critical. We're also taking in 1/4 ton of cinematic equipment to film, so it wasn't just hard getting ourselves to the summits of these 20,000 foot peaks, but also getting the equipment up there as well. So it was a real challenge, and we thought that the personal challenge that I was experiencing might be a good metaphor for the challenge that we humans are facing with this climate crisis. So we decided to take the audience along with me on this personal story as well. So there are quite a few underlying narrative threads that run through the story, and this is one of them. And we hope that the audience can understand that the fear and challenge that I'm there to overcome is also very similar to what we all need to confront and overcome with the climate crisis. So it served a purpose within the story of the film itself, but as you point out, it was difficult, and it was quite a challenge for me personally to overcome. And something I discovered through that process is that many extreme sports people actually do have a fear of heights, and they do those sports because they like to challenge themselves mentally in overcoming those hurdles and being able to tackle those sports. And it is really about focus, and so I enjoy that part of it. But certainly my fear hasn't changed. I've just learned how to deal with it more and overcome that mental challenge.
Thank you for sharing. You mentioned the Ice Memory Project and the impact of the change over time, and that's something. Environmental sustainability is one of our core areas of focus here at the Museum of Discovery and Science, and we actually have a wonderful exhibit that explores that in our Florida fossils, because at the peak of the last ice age, Florida was twice the size. And so if you really want to see the impact of climate change historically, naturally over time, that's one way to see it. But you got up close and personal with the impact of human-caused climate change, in different places all around the world, which I found so fascinating. What was it like to see that physical evidence of climate change in glaciers, so up close and personal?
When you climb to the summit of 20,000 foot peak and look down on dying glaciers and realize that we're all responsible for that, but more importantly, what that means for people all around the world. Migration is already an issue because people no longer have hydration in the places that they've grown up for generations, where they've tended crops and livestock. And also manufactured products. The shirts that we wear that come from places like India and China and Bangladesh rely on thousands and thousands of liters of water each just to make. And these are processes that are now under threat because the meltwater from glaciers is drying up in many areas as they disappear. And so we're all suffering already, even though some of us may not realize it. But supply chains are going to be disrupted even further by the fact that we don't have this incredible resource. So glaciers are not just water storage devices. They also provide manufacturing and all sorts of things, but they also reflect heat into the atmosphere and keep the globe at a cool temperature. So as they disappear and they expose the brown rock of these mountains, then the brown as an absorber of heat rather than a reflector of the snow. And that feedback loop speeds up. And that's what we're seeing in many mountain areas, is that the melt that happened a decade ago, 2 decades ago, is actually become even faster this decade because more brown rock is exposed, more heat is being absorbed, and that's causing mountains to heat up and also to expand. And as they expand, they cause more avalanches, mudslides, and become more dangerous to people who live in those areas. So it was a very emotional moment to climb into these glaciers and to witness what was happening. They are living systems themselves, and they affect living systems. And when you realize that domino effect, then it becomes something, I guess you realize you're witnessing a tragedy in slow motion. And we have a graphic in the film which is very telling. It shows Florida, as it does many places around the world, suffering from the effects of climate change, where these glaciers and ice caps melt. And it shows what will happen to Florida if all the ice melts. And pretty much the bottom of Florida disappears completely underwater. And as you mentioned, it was a lot bigger during the last ice age. And of course, as we increase that melt, because beyond the natural cycle, then that is speeding up in real time, and we're feeling it. And already we're seeing encroachment into coastal areas. We're seeing housing being affected as houses are eroded and fall into the ocean. Roads are being torn up. And as you know, in certain high tides in Miami, we're seeing roads completely underwater with seawater. And that's something that's not only going to increase, but it's going to happen a lot faster as these feedback loops increase.
You know, I think one of the things that was so powerful about the Last Glaciers, Craig, was your opportunity to talk with young people who really are, you know, so passionate about this. We here at the museum host an annual Youth Climate Summit in partnership with our local school district and the local county. And this year alone, we had over 3,000 students participate in the virtual summit. And just a few days after the film opens, we're hosting our in-person event for 250 really passionate, fired up, caring, exciting young people who want to make a difference. You know, why do you think our planet, thankfully, our planet's youth are really rallying behind this cause now more than ever?
Yeah, as you point out, it's another narrative thread in the film, and a very strong one. And that's because we see the next generation as vital for, as being responsible for helping address the problem and also for finding solutions, but also because we need to leave them with a sound, healthy future where they can profit and enjoy themselves in a very healthy way, much the way that we have and my generation has. And we're just not doing that at the moment. But we present young people as a solution to the problem. And the reason we show that thread is because we want to show young people that, look, we do care. We do understand this problem. And the majority of people do want to leave a sound legacy, and that is a clean future for the next generation. But for those of my generation who perhaps aren't that focused on doing that, then the message in the film is clear, and that is that we do need to support young people. So I thought it was very important that we brought young people into the film. We brought them along with us in the film, and we gave them a voice. And in so doing, then we need to also give them the tools that they need to help solve these problems. So by creating awareness and sharing the science and the data, that's what we're aiming to do with the film, and to do it in a way that everybody can understand. The science around climate can be very dense and difficult to understand. It's varied. There's so many aspects to it. And what we wanted to do was write a script and present narration that an 8-year-old can understand. And that was our benchmark. And we believed that by doing that and then incorporating that with very powerful visuals, then young people would feel that they understand the story even better. They would feel included, and that they would know that there are people who've got their back. And we've built a very comprehensive website, thelastglaciers.com, to go with the film to help young people research the data better. So we present all the data from the institutions we work with, including NASA and INAHAM and ICIMOD and Arctic Base Camp and all these wonderful scientists. But we also have tools in there that they can use to further understand what their own footprint is. So we have a carbon calculator, which tells you what your carbon footprint is from a meal that you may eat or a journey you may take, whether it be to go to school or to go on holiday. So there are plenty of tools on there that they can access, and also it gives them access to a lot of the scientific institutions so they can further their own knowledge.
Craig, thank you. I was going to comment on just how wonderful the website is with regards to having a really clear call to action, really focusing on solutions, because I think ultimately, we have to focus on solutions. We have to focus on how we can empower, as you say, young children to be part of that solution, because they are part of that solution, and give them the tools to be successful. I know, amazingly, we're running out of time already, but thank you so much for the opportunity to chat this morning. Really excited, everyone, to welcome everyone to the Museum of Discovery and Science to see The Last Glaciers starting April 15th. And just in closing questions, what's next for you? Any fun, exciting projects that you're working on next?
Well, thanks very much for the privilege of being able to screen the film at your centre, and I look forward to hearing from people who see it there. Send us comments. We'd love to know what your thoughts are, and to include you in rounding up the thoughts of the film. So next, we've always got a couple of films on the go. We're usually waiting for finance to come through and other facts to happen. There's a new TV series that I'll be working on with another production company in the US, which I'll be very excited to talk about at a future date. And we're also looking at doing maybe a new Plastic Oceans film, a film that looks at where we've come from since that film was first started, which, we started that film 9 years ago, 10 years ago now, and it took 8 years to make, and it's now been out for 3 years. So we might go back and see where we've moved as far as the single-use plastic issue is concerned. And unfortunately, the sad word on that is that we haven't come very far. We've recognized the problem and we're banning it in many places, but that's still an issue that we need to address, because we are producing more of the stuff than ever before. So quite a few interesting documentaries coming up. I like to focus on issues that are important to everybody, so that we can get as many people involved in the solution process as possible.
Craig, thank you. Just congratulations on creating an incredible film. Thank you to IMAX for their involvement to bring this to life, and really looking forward to welcoming everyone to watch it in person. And it really is a wonderful blend of the thrill of that extreme sport, but the sincere emotion related to the fact that we have to act now to make a difference. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks very much. Good luck with the film.